Okay, good evening. Welcome to Ultimate Project 18. Today we're going to take a real short look at the Revolver Ironside game. This was the semis at 2011 ECC, and this is one of UltiVillage's Elite Team Partnership program videos. This is not a great game. Either team, I think, is going to be super proud of how they played here. Ironside in particular has a horrible game. But I think there's still a handful of things that are very valuable in this video to learn from, whether you're a young player or you know, all the way up to the elite level. So let's dig into it. I'm going to try to keep it under 10 minutes. The first thing I want to point out is there's only 18 points on the film out of the 27 at Revolver. I think won 15-12, something like that. So I'm not sure why. At first it's a little disappointing that some of the points aren't there, but then when you watch some of the play, you actually kind of wish that more points were missing. Revolver throws, in the film, Revolver throws 137 passes and has 7 turns, 95%. Ironside throws 60 passes and has 9 turns, which is 85%. Normally I don't think these pass and turn stats really tell the story, but here they sort of do. Revolver's turning it over once every 20 passes. Ironside's turning it over once every 7 passes. It's pretty hard to believe. After Revolver turns, Ironside has a long field 3 times, scores twice. Medium field 3 times, scores once. A short field 1 time does not score. After Ironside turns, Revolver has a long field 8 times and scores 6. So that matches Double Wide's performance against Johnny Bravo. They never get a medium field because Ironside hucks every single time they get the disc, and they have a short field once on a blocked huck. So, I think one of the big stories in this game are the long turns. Oh, actually, sorry, one other thing. I mean, you can see Ironside gets 4 gifts from Revolver here and converts 1. Revolver gets 1 gift and doesn't convert. So that difference in opportunities there is 3. And that's the score of the game, and Ironside failed to convert 3 out of 4. So, as bad as Ironside played, they had an opportunity to be there right up until the end. So anyway, let's take a look. Let's take a look at the turns here in a little bit more detail. Okay, so to take a look at the hucks, I went through this video one extra time to recount the pass attempts and classify them into dump swings, short gains, or hucks. And I think if different people did this, you know, you're going to mix up a little bit between, you know, short gains and dump swings. So that sort of wasn't the point. But this does tell a story. Ironside's passes 23 dump swings, 22 passes for short gains, and 15 huck attempts. Of the 15 huck attempts, 8 were incomplete. Revolver has 58 dump swings, 71 passes for short gains, 8 huck attempts, of which 2 were incomplete. So you can see Ironside's not really trying to do anything in this game other than huck. It's just an astonishing performance for an elite team. I mean, they look like a summer league team, to be perfectly honest, and probably a little harsh. But this, I mean, if you want to be in the conversation as one of the best teams in the country or one of the best teams in the world, however you want to say it, this isn't even close. As I read down sort of my own notes on these 15 huck attempts, and look, some of them were high stalls or whatever, but I mean, in aggregate, this still holds. I mean, my notes just say like horrible, horrible, terrible. I mean, one even says you're cut. I mean, this is just awful, and you know, I wouldn't want, if I was a member of Ironside, I wouldn't want to be in the room with the coach Josh McCarthy when he goes over this film. I mean, he's going to be livid. In fact, I think he's going to have a real hard time searching for anything nice to say about Ironside's play in this game. This is terrible. There's nothing else you can say. Okay, well let's try to get to some of the lessons, or some things to look at, and the first one is we get 5 hammers from Revolver in this game, which I think are worth looking at, especially if you're a young player and you want to sort of learn about what good hammers are and what bad hammers are. Okay, so one of the interesting things to learn about in this game and focus on as you're watching about it is the 5 hammer choices that Revolver made during the game. The first one at 5-10 is just horrible, and sort of concludes. It's the last of, I think it's 4 or 5 really bad turns. Actually 4, number 4. Really bad turns in the beginning of this game for Revolver. Just a floaty hammer right into the middle of the field for no reason. It's easily blocked. A little bit later, there's a hammer that's perfectly fine and to me just completely acceptable. A little swing pass across the field to somebody who's all alone. And the difference in those two is really one thing to focus on. Later on, there's one thrown for a goal at 13:51. Again, it's just thrown out to space for someone who's unguarded and comes underneath it easy. The one at 17:28, my opinion here, this is a bad one. This by the way scores a goal, and I think this is also coming off of a timeout, which is really peculiar. I'm sure this wasn't what they called in the timeout, but you would think they could have found something better off a set play. But this is another one that sort of goes into the middle of the field, and this time the Revolver player comes down with it, but you hope they can find better choices. And then at 18:21, this is sort of similar to the one at 5:48. This is a nice little easy swing pass. So when someone's kind of all by themselves and there's a throw that gets out to space and the guy can get underneath it and come down, that's fine. When you're trying to do something pinpoint into the middle of the field, like at 5:10 and 17:28, you're going to have problems. It seems to me to be a little bit of unnecessary risk. But these are some good examples, especially if you sort of are a younger player looking to see what happens with elite teams in this throw. Okay, on to the next point. Okay, now, as I said in the prior Revolver game, the last one I did, Revolver versus Ring, this is the beginning of the season for these teams, and they're not going to be firing on full cylinders. I think Revolver played a lot better in the Ring game than they did in this game. But in both of the games, the one area where I'd be a little concerned, even though it's the beginning of the season, if I'm Revolver, and I'd want to look at these points and think through this very carefully, is Revolver's end zone O. I pointed out a few examples against Ring, and I'll give you 3 examples against Ironside here where Revolver is struggling. One is the first point, and especially the goal, which is a step around inside out flick that it's hard to tell. It looks like it should have been blocked easily, but it ends up scoring. The second thing to look at is from 125 to 224, the next point. And this time that step around inside out flick comes back to bite Revolver as they turn it over on the 10th pass here, right around the end zone. And the third point is the possession. This comes in the middle of the possession, but say starting around 10 minutes in to the end of that possession. I don't understand what Revolver's trying to do in their end zone O. It doesn't look like they're really focused. And the question I'd really love to know the answer to is, if everything went right for them, how would their end zone O work? Because right now it's hard to, like I said, it's hard to tell what they're trying to do, and it's hard to tell even what the point is of their end zone offense. And they're really struggling to score when they get near the end zone. Here they turn it over on their 10th pass. Here they screw around a lot and then eventually score with this ridiculous inside-out forehand, which is not, if you're Revolver, how you want to score, I don't think. And then, later on, these are just 3 points where they're struggling. If I was Revolver, or I was, Dutchy and trying to figure out, things to work on, I would spend a lot of time looking at the films of where they get near the end zone and figure out a way to improve that. Because I think they're being, 1, very inefficient, and 2, you're going to get turns like this, where you're just throwing a bunch of passes and eventually turn it over, and you definitely don't want that. Okay, so last point. All right, and the last thing I want to talk about is the advantage that Revolver has over Ironside in particular, but probably over a lot of teams, in mental toughness and in style of play. So where I give Revolver a ton of credit in this game is how they recover from a terrible start. So they have 4 really bad turns at the beginning of this game. They have that IO flick near the end zone I mentioned before. They just miss on a wide open throw in the end zone on the next point. They have a bad huck execution or decision, and then they have that terrible hammer. These are just 4 completely unforced, and for a team at the level of Revolver, terrible turns to start this game. And Ironside has the disc to go down, to go up, 4-1, and they miss an easy throw into the end zone. Bad execution on the throw. Had a chance to catch it, but it got dropped. But after that, so this is right after the terrible hammer, and then Ironside turns it over. The possession from 5:28 that ends with Revolver scoring right around 7 minutes changes the game around completely. I don't know if Revolver took a timeout or just calmed down, but here they work up the disc up the field slowly. They don't take risks, and they climb out of, or they begin to climb out of the hole. And that, watching them here in this minute and a half after the first 4 terrible turnovers shows you the mental toughness of this team. They just said to themselves, we have got to start playing, and they did. The next thing I want to point out is an interest, just in my mind, that what sums up the styles of play here. Ironside has a huck at 19:08. That's George Stubbs to Pete Priel. And it's an amazing play. I mean, it's an absolutely amazing play. Stubbs gets the disc coming across the field, catches it, throws a pinpoint huck into the corner of the end zone to Priel's running deep. Okay. Revolver has a play just a few minutes later on the film anyway. That's Bo. Oh shoot, I can't remember who he's hucking to. But anyway, so it's Bo hucking to somebody, and it's not a good huck. I would say if Bo was explaining that one to you, I bet he missed by 30 yards where he was trying to throw. But it's still complete because of Revolver's spacing, which I talked about. If you want to go back to the prior film against Ring, I show you 5 or 6 examples there to look at under spacing. And this to me is the difference. Ironside's offense relies on people doing amazing things, and everything has to be perfect. The catch, throw, and cut deep has to be perfect. And that's why they're at 50% on these hucks, because you can't be perfect all the time. And so they have amazing plays, but they also have horrendous plays, because if everything's not perfect, their O doesn't work. Revolver, on the other hand, instead of relying on people being perfect execution on everything, relies on taking advantage of spacing, and they have huge margins for error. This is a terrible throw at 20-25. And yet, not only is it complete, but it's completed to the intended receiver, and the defense there's no one on D who has a chance of blocking this. And that's the difference. Revolver doesn't have to execute perfectly because they're relying on spacing. Ironside's relying on athleticism and amazing throws to win, and that just doesn't win at the top level. You can't rely on constant perfect execution. You get amazing plays like this, but you also get the horror show of 8 out of 15 turnovers on hucks. And, I think you want to be Revolver. You want to have the margin for error. That's why Revolver's good. When they play well, I got to tell you, Revolver's going to be hard to beat. And I'm very impressed, going back to up here, with this possession. 5:28 to 7 minutes, where they're off to a terrible start and deserved to be down 4-1. It's just by miracle that they're not. And they come back from being down there to winning the game 15-12. So good for Revolver. Hopefully I stuck to 10 minutes here, I'm not sure, but an interesting game to watch. And thanks again to Alta Village and Patagonia and Discraft for putting this together. These are really fun and really educational games.